Today is the 8th of August, and this day in Baptist history, our reading is Firm Friends of Liberty. Our passage of Scripture is Galatians chapter 5 and verse 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Baptists in America have led the way in the fight for religious freedom and soul liberty in our great land from the very first. In a letter to President George Washington, dated August 8, 1789, the General Committee of Virginia Baptists wrote to commend the newly elected president and to explain anew their position concerning such freedom. They wrote, and I quote, "To the President of the United States of America, Sir, among the many shouts of congratulations that you receive from cities, societies, states, and the whole world, we wish to take an active part in the universal chorus by expressing our great satisfaction in your appointment to the first office in the nation." When the Constitution first made its appearance in Virginia, we as a society had unusual strugglings of mind, fearing the liberty of conscience, dearer to us than property and life, was not sufficiently secured. Perhaps our jealousies were heightened on account of the usage we received in Virginia under the British government, when mobs, bonds, fines, and prisons were our frequent request. Convinced, on the one hand, that without an effective national government the states would fall into disunion, and all the consequent evils, on the other hand, it was feared that we might be accessory to some religious oppression should any one society in the Union preponderate, I'll get that right, all the rest. But amidst all the restlessness of mind, our consolation arose from this consideration. The plan must be good, for it bears the signature of a tried, trusty friend. And if religious liberty is rather insecure in the Constitution, the administration will certainly prevent all oppression, for a Washington will preside. End of quote. Following significant words of approval, the letter was signed for the committee by Samuel Harris, who served as chairman. Washington's reply is worthy of note, and he wrote, and I quote, "Gentlemen, I request that you accept my best acknowledgments for your congratulation on my appointment to the first office in the nation. If I could have entertained the slightest apprehension that the Constitution framed in the convention, where I had the honor to preside, might possibly endanger the religious rights of any ecclesiastical society, certainly I would never have placed my signature to it. And if I could not conceive that the general government might ever be so administered as to render the liberty of conscience insecure, I beg you will be persuaded that no one would be more zealous than myself to establish effectual barriers against the horrors of spiritual tyranny and every species of religious persecution. While I recollect with satisfaction that the religious society of which you are members have been throughout America uniformly and almost unanimously the firm friends to civil liberty, and the persevering promoters of our glorious revolution, I cannot hesitate to believe that they will be faithful supporters of a free yet efficient general government." End of quote. The following words of thanksgiving, the letter was simply signed, George Washington. A month following this correspondence, James Madison, with the approval of President George Washington, brought several constitutional amendments before the House of Representatives. Among them was the first, and it had the fingerprints of Reverend John Leland, famed Baptist preacher, all over it. It reads, and I quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." End of quote. This proposed amendment met with great opposition in the Congress, but it passed that body on September 12, 1789, and was submitted to the 13 states for ratification. 11 of the 13 states adopted it, with the New Jersey being the first on November 20th, 1789, and Virginia being the last on December 15th, 1791. Thus, the despised old Baptist tenet of soul liberty, for which blood had been shed for centuries, was engrafted into the organic law of the United States. This was the very first time in the history of mankind that any nation so boldly assured soul liberty and freedom of worship. The often quoted First Amendment made the Constitution palatable to the Baptists. The First Amendment grew out of a conference between Reverend John Leland and James Madison. The state of Virginia has marked the historical site of the meeting between these two men by designating a park as the Leland-Madison State Park on State Highway 20 in Orange County, Virginia. We thank the Lord for our part our forefathers played in making America the nation that it is. Let us determine to protect the freedom that provides us the opportunity to proclaim the message of redeeming grace freely in our world. To God be the glory.